Once again, everybody. Today's sutta is entitled Yawa Kalapi Sutta. Yawa means barley. Of course, in the ancient times it could refer to any kind of grain, but in the Buddha's time it probably means barley. Kalapi means a sheaf of a kind of cloud. And once we have harvested the barley, so kind of tied together in the little collection of them. So they stack them together, okay? Not stack them together for the thresh and winnow. So here, the parable of the sheaves of barley, all right, we will look at it in a moment, okay? And then Mara also is mentioned here. So here, in other words, we have a teaching on the nature of the mind, how to calm the mind down. Before we know how to calm the mind down, we've got to know what kind of mind needs calming, right? So the sutta talks about the nature of the troubled mind. Okay, let's go straight into the sutta, page 80. The discourse on the sheaf of barley. Here there's only one sheaf, as you will see in the parable. 3.1. So the sutta starts straight away into the parable. Yeah? Bhikshu, suppose a sheaf of barley were thrown down at a crossroads. Then 6 men were to come, each with a flail in hand, and they were to strike that sheaf of barley with their 6 flails. Okay, let's look at this first part. Now, of course, the Buddha is not just telling us something about agriculture. He's using a familiar idea to lead us on to something more profound, but more real and more important to us. So we have here the 2 levels of learning, or 2 languages, if you like. This is mentioned in the Book of Tools in the Anguttara. Buddha reminds us when we go to read suttas, we must ask ourselves, what level is the sutta talking, so to speak? Yeah? If there are stories, if there are things, people, devas, ghosts, animals talking and so on, or even the word being, right? We know that's the story level. Then the Buddha would use direct terms, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, non-self. So terms like that, they refer directly to the Dharma level. So you have story level, truth level, if you like, Dharma or truth level. Okay? So when we look at this parable here, obviously here the Buddha is talking on the story level. Okay? So Buddha says, imagine we have this clump of sheaf or barley and it is thrown on the ground. Not just on the ground, it is at the crossroads. Crossroads are not mentioned in Buddhism. Okay? So here we can say crossroads can represent our life, okay? Or the mind, if you like. Then 6 people came along. Okay? 6 people. What does number 6 stand for? We can ask ourselves, what in the Dharma or on the truth level, number 6? Well, here becomes quite clear in section 4.1. It's mentioned eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, right? And these 6 people, they are flailing, they are hitting this sheaf of barley with a special kind of stick to break or separate the grains from the stalks. Okay? So the Buddha says these sheaves of barley were all broken up. But he didn't stop there. 3.2, he says, thus bhikshus, that sheaf of barley, having been struck with the 6 flails, would be thoroughly broken up. Right? And then it goes on further, 3.3, page 80, section 3.3. Then a 7th man were to come with a flail in hand, And he would strike that chief of Bali with a seventh flail. So he goes on beating someone. You know? All these, of course, are echoing real historical events which people do every year in the agricultural cycle. They harvest their crops, they put them on the ground, they fail them, they winnow them, and so on. Right? The Buddha continues. Thus, indeed, bhikshus, that chief of Bali, having been struck by the seventh flail, would be even more thoroughly broken up. Right? So here you are. This is the parable. The chief of Bali on the ground, 6 people come and bring it all up. So later on, you find you have the interpretation. The rest of the sutta interprets this parable. So the chief of Bali, you can say, represents our actions, body, speech, and mind. And then these 6 people coming to beat up, flail this body are the activities of our 6 senses. What we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, this create our karma. And it affects our minds also. Our mind affects these actions also. It goes like that, back and forth. Now, the 7th man here represents rebirth. So the Buddha says, can you imagine if you want rebirth, you're just repeating all these things. So it's even more painful, more troubling. So this is obviously a teaching for monks, right? But for lay people, we can also interpret this for our understanding. Rebirth, we can take it as continued existence, right? In other words, becoming this, falling back into this situation again and again. I have no problem with the teaching of rebirth, although some modern Buddhists, because of the doubt, the reservations about believing in something they cannot, what they claim they cannot tangibly prove. So we have no palpable evidence for rebirth. Well, for me, how I resolve this issue is I tell myself, let's just imagine, okay, but this is the word imagination, so let's just imagine. What choices do we have when we look at the world as it is, right? You'll find, although we like to say it's good, the good people will enjoy good results, good karma, the bad people will suffer the bad karma. We don't often see this. And when we do see these so-called bad people suffering, we actually feel that they have been rather, they're facing misfortune. I mean, if they have been more, they've been better informed, or they were wiser, or they were better educated, and so on, they wouldn't have made a mistake, right? So in a sense, we feel compassion for them. In other words, you don't really see on a daily basis the good enjoying good benefits and the bad suffering bad results. So we might say, does karma really work, for example? So we can ask those questions, but of course we should also examine what's going on in terms of karma. But today we will only look at rebirth, okay? So let's put it this way, you have 2 choices to simplify the problem, right? One is to believe in the God idea, there's only one life, and then, well, I don't think there's any religion that talks of one life, at least 2 lives. In other words, there's the present one, and then the one that comes after this. So in a sense, we can say at least 2 lives, because even if you're a God believer, you die and then you go to heaven, so there's a second life, or you go to hell, if you like. So people who, according to the God believers, they claim, okay, if you believe in God, you go to heaven, if you don't, you go to hell, okay? That's the basic idea. Now, but there are lots of problems here, and I don't think anyone really seriously take this kind of idea today, except where it is expedient, which is useful to have such an idea. Or in a sense, some people, they have no choice but to believe in this kind of idea. Imagine you're running the Vatican, you can't say, hey, let us be Buddhist, who's going to take care of the Vatican treasures, So you have quite a big problem there. So in a sense, people are caught up with their worldly things, worldly burden, So after what is a belief, it's anybody's imagination, and you come up with all these theological ideas, anything can be proven to be right. In fact, if you see religion today, the basis of religion is not truth today, the basis of religion is wealth, funds. I mean, if you have some religious ideas, you use your money to start a big building, the more impressive it is, the better. People will come, people will believe. And there's so many records of such tragic incidents where religion is misused. So anyway, so the God idea is a bit problematic. It's got more problems than solutions. On the other hand, if you talk about rebirth, you say, okay, we've been here before, and what we do now will condition us to be born in the future. At least on an imaginative level, it's more ethical. It's an ethical idea, because we know we will come back to this place. So we're going to love the earth, respect the earth more, because we're going to come back to this same place. There's a very interesting story about a rich Brahmin. He died, and then he was reborn as a dog in his own home. So in a sense, he came back to his own home. Okay? And many other stories like this, people coming back to their erstwhile homes and so on. Then we were asked the question, okay, if you talk about rebirth, then how does it work? We talk about karma, right? So we talk about karma, we talk about self-accountability, right? What I do, I'm accountable to it, and I know the idea is in my mind, and the Buddha says, we will know our own actions. We may try to hide from others, but the Buddhas and the Devas, and you yourself will know the good and the bad that you have done, right? So from there, you have the seeds of karma. There's another point about rebirth which I should add here. A very simple idea. Because as you know, Buddhism is a natural religion. We don't claim a certain higher being, send the Buddha down with a message. The Buddha says, look around you, what do you see? Right, you see impermanence. And if something is impermanent, obviously it is unsatisfactory. And what is impermanent and unsatisfactory, there's nothing there which is fixed. There's no essence there. Whether Buddhas arise or not, this is the truth. So we see Buddhism as a natural religion. So when you look around, what do you see? We see plants. We see plants growing, flowering, seeding, and then the seeds fall to the ground, and then they grow again. The same plant, sometimes they become even better, they're more fruitful and so on. Now, if something as lowly, the human mind, something as lowly as plants can regenerate in that sense to their seeds, human beings too regenerate through human seeds. But what about on the mental level? It is also possible on the mental level, or rather on the karmic level, that we, like plants, we regenerate, we are reborn. Just like plants. Same kind of plants producing the same kind. So the kind of mind that we cultivate, that we habituate, will decide the kind of being we become in the future. In other words, this body may be a human body, but the mind may not yet be human. The mind may not be human at all even. If someone is very violent or exploitative, maybe he has the mind of, let's say, an asura, or there is asura mentioned here in this story, in this sutta. So this human body has an asura mind, a violent mind. So when the body reaches its shelf life, the body stops functioning, the mind remains. What kind of mind is that? It's an asura mind. So understandably, this asura mind wandering around will look for another asura body. That is rebirth. Okay? So we can say that, in a sense, metaphorically speaking, rebirth can even take place in this life itself, in the sense that someone who is, a child is born as a tabula rasa, okay? I mean, blank slate, and he can be taught a lot of things, good or bad. And the first 7 years are crucial, formative. Only, yesterday we had this wonderful session with a young kid, the only child in a single parent family. The father tragically died while he was still very young, And this child has no father figure, so he became violent, and the mother became very helpless. They came to see us, and so of course this child was too young to be a counselor. Just make friends with him. He know a few things, a book, and he likes. I asked him what subject. He mentioned English. I said, "Oh, good." And I gave him a couple of my books, and I asked him to read to me, and told him I was very good in reading and so on, and then brought him around the building that we were in, and so basically befriended him. He was so happy, and the wonderful thing is that changed his life. Now, if all this goes well, we're talking about this young boy. He has taken a different crossroads now, and his life is going to be different. It's going to be very successful, happy in the future. Hopefully that's the way it is. So what I'm saying here is that this young boy has a chance of becoming a violent person if he learns more violence, or he can be shown that there is this thing called love and care. It's taken this way. So we can change anytime, right? So in other words, although the mind may be an asura mind, can change into a human mind, into a deva mind, an awakened mind. On the other hand, it can also degenerate, it can go down, so be very careful, right? So karma and rebirth work in this way. So if you understand in this way, I think it shouldn't be too difficult for us to accept karma and rebirth, right? Okay, so we are finished with the parable. Now the Buddha goes on to the teaching itself. Now, the teaching here is very simple, kind of it's a list of teachings to be reflected on, especially page 82, 83. But there's one more story coming. There are two. One is a parable. Now we have a story, a mythical story, if you like. Now we'll come to that in a moment. There's one teaching embedded here. So the Buddha gives a parable and then a teaching. Okay. So in other words, the Buddha is saying, okay, these six individuals flailing the sheep of Bali, what do they represent? They represent the six senses, right? So look at 4.1. Even so, bhikshus, the ignorant worldling is struck in the eye with forms, agreeable and disagreeable. There you are. You have this very interesting interpretation. Our eyes are struck with forms. So here the Buddha talks in a rather figurative way, very dramatic way. We don't just see things, we are struck by them, right? Literally and figuratively. In other words, we see them as agreeable or disagreeable. And this is where you apply the 5 aggregates, right? How do we see something as agreeable? Through perception. How do you see something as disagreeable? Through perception. In other words, you look back to the past and you recognize the present and then you see it in that way. So it's a kind of projection. Same thing with the ear. Struck in the ear with sounds, agreeable and disagreeable. Struck in the nose with smells, agreeable and disagreeable. Struck in the tongue with taste, agreeable and disagreeable. Struck in the body or on the body with touches, agreeable and disagreeable. Struck in the mind with thoughts, agreeable and disagreeable. So these are the 6 individuals flailing the sheep of Bali. Now the 7th individual, section 4.2. If bhikshus, that ignorant worldling were to think of further rebirths, then empty person as such would be even more thoroughly struck, just as that sheep of Bali is being struck by the 7th flail, right? So the Buddha says if we in terms of rebirth, if we're going to repeat all this striking, all this being attacked, being overwhelmed by the 6 sense objects, then the Buddha uses a battle imagery, the battle between the devas and the asuras. Okay? 5.1. Once upon a time, bhikshus. Now notice here again, when we see once upon a time in our schooling, we say, oh, okay, it's a story, right? So we can take this as a mythical story. We don't have to take it historically, if you like. Once upon a time, bhikshus, the devas and the asuras were at war, in the thick of battling. Then bhikshus, Vepachiti, the leader of the asuras, addressed the asuras. If such in the thick of this battle, this war between the Devas and Asuras, the Asuras were to win and the Devas were to lose, let us bind Sakra, the leader of the Devas, with the 5 bonds, or the binding, binding the 4 limbs and the neck. So it's called a 5 bonds, or 5-fold bonds. And bring him to Asura city, Asurapura. And Sakra, the leader of the Devas, two bhikshus addressed the Devas. If such, that in the thick of this battle, this war between the Devas and the Asuras, the Devas were to win and the Asuras were to lose. Let's thus bind Vipachiti, the leader of the Asuras, with the 5 bonds and bring him before me in Sudama Deva Assembly Hall. Right? So the 2 leaders, they are saying that, well, if we conquer this group, we will capture the leader. Now, bhikshus, in this war, the Devas won. Right? The Devas usually win anyway, and the Asuras lost. Then bhikshus, the Tavatimsa Devas, having bound Vipachiti, the leader of the Asuras, with the 5 bonds, brought him before Sakra, the leader of the Devas, in Sudama Assembly Hall. By the way, this binding with the 4 limbs and the neck, it should be square brackets. No? Square brackets means it either explains it or you can use it as a kind of alternate translation.
Sorry,
It can be an alternate translation. That means if you don't know the first word, you can use the one in square brackets. In this case, if you look at the word 5-4 bonds, you may wonder what is it, you know. So you can either email me or to save that problem, but put in the square brackets here, the sense of it. It means binding of the 4 limbs and around the neck, so it's called 5. Okay, so the one square bracket is like, it explains in some detail the meaning. That is why you have to put in square brackets, but it's not really an original part of the Pali text.
Okay.
Okay, so Vipachiti lost and he was bound with these 5 bonds, or 5-4 bonds. Yeah? Now, so he was brought to the Deva world, right? So this is the next part, very interesting. New development which the Buddha is going to use, 6.1. Now bhikshus, in this war, the Devas won and Asuras lost, then bhikshus, so the 33 Devas, the Devas of the heaven of 33, Devatimsa, they bound Vipachiti and brought him before Sakra. 7.2. Now bhikshus, this occurred to Vipachiti, the leader of the Asuras. The Devas are indeed righteous, unrighteous are the Asuras. Now right here I am. I've come to Deva city. Then he sees himself freed from the 5-fold bonds and being served so that he is fitting, replete with the 5 divine pleasures. But bhikshus, when this occurred to Vipachiti, the leader of the Asuras are indeed righteous, unrighteous are the Devas. Right now I must go to Asura city. Then he sees himself bound in the 5-fold bonds and the 5 divine sensual pleasures vanished. Okay, it is a very interesting story here. It's got a psychological undertone. So if you don't know the mythology of the Asuras and Devas, we might say, oh, this is just another of those mythologies, you know. But it has got very profound psychological implications. You see, in many psychological systems, especially the psychodynamic system, Freud and others, they use what I call mythology. People like this Edward Adler and Carl Jung especially, uses a lot of mythology, okay? Stories to explain what's going on in our minds. So here, as you know, these Asuras, they represent a violent personality. But violence starts where it starts in the mind, see? And the asuras, by the way, they were suras before. Suras means deva, by the way. Sura means deva. You know, sura and deva mean the same thing. From the word sura, you get the word surya. Okay? So, because of their some negative habits they had, especially getting drunk in the heavens, they were thrown down from the heavens, so they became asuras. Right? So asura also means no more drink. Okay, so two meanings. No more drink or no more drink. Stop drinking. Asura. Sorry? No, sura means strong drink. Because they got drunk. The gods got drunk. They are called the old gods, you see. So they got drunk. So the new gods, Sakura and company, or Chinese Ting Kong, so they were not too happy. They said, look at these old gods, they're messing themselves up. So when they were drunk, the new gods pushed them down the heavens and they fell. See? So while they were falling, they realized, oh dear, we have been ousted by the young gods. So they said, we have to stop drinking. No more sura, asura. Okay? Sura means strong drink. Second meaning. Remember, in your precept, you said Sura, Meraya, Majja, Pamadatana, remember? The fifth precept. So that's one meaning. The other meaning, Sura, means brave. I suppose when you are drunk, you become brave. Okay. Anyway, it also means brave. Okay. So, Sura also is another word for Deva. So because they fell in the heavens, they also called Asura, anti-gods. Or in Greek mythology they call it the Titans. And even in Greek mythology, you have the Titans fighting the gods. But in Greek mythology, some of the gods do die, you know, but not in the Indian mythology. So anyway, the gods and the asuras don't really die until their karma finishes, that is. That's this mythology, right? But they're always at war. After all, what else can you do? I mean, it's a long holiday in heaven, you know. So they play war games. You know, we were kids, that's what we do, right? We got a lot of time. We play war games. And then we become adults, we play real war games. So, in this case, Vipachiti lost, the asuras lost, so he was captured. So when he thought negative thoughts, then he sees himself as suffering. He sees himself, if he thinks negative thoughts, when, in other words, he gets angry with the devas. So, with that negative mind, he falls into suffering because he thinks negative thoughts. On the other hand, if he says, okay, after the devas are alright, you know, and he has this mind of loving kindness, then he sees everything as heaven around him. Actually, he is in heaven with the, what they call the devas, you know. So when he thinks positive, he's able to enjoy all the heavenly joy, the five senses, because this heaven is still in the sense realm, you know, Sakra's heaven. So here, in other words, how we think will decide how we enjoy life or not, in other words, right? So what the Buddha is saying, a lot depends on how we think, right? So even in the case of asuras, that they are anti-gods because of their violent nature. So if they let go of their violent nature, they give up their violent nature, they become gods again. Right? So it's a mental thing. See, it's how our mind works, in other words. Okay? Alright, so the story finishes there. Now the real teaching starts, alright? So this is on page 82, 83. Yeah? So now this repetition, I put everything out in full. Okay? Now I must tell you, as far as I know, this is the first translation in the world that lays out everything completely. Perhaps in the traditional Thai translation, Singlish translation, Burmese translation, there might be that too, I think. But in English, we are the first. Because other translators, they shorten it because they feel it's too boring to list out everything. Then there was a scholar in the UK, L.S. Cousin, says, no, we should not do that. You know, because if the Buddha laid out everything in full, he has a good reason for it, because it's meant to be a reflection, meant to be a meditation. Alright? So in other words, we read through this, we reflect, and then we are reminded what are the things that cause us mental difficulties. Okay, so before we go into this section, notice page 82, the header there is Mara's bonds, or breaking Mara's bonds. Okay, the Buddha says, in fact, the words are all there, 8.1, 8.2, top of page 82. Thus subtle indeed bhikshus are Vipachiti's bonds, but subtler than that are Mara's bonds. Okay? So Vipachiti's bonds are the, like you see in the Chinese story, they have this big piece of wood, the prisoner put the hands through there, right? And then the neck comes up, the head comes up through the hole. But in this story, Vipachiti, the Asura, is bound hands and leg and neck with ropes, 5-4 bonds, so he has to walk very carefully. All right? You sometimes see this in the prison story also, the chains link up the two legs, the hands and the neck, so you cannot run, see? All right? So the story says that although these bonds are there, the 5 bonds, if Vipachiti thinks positively, he says, oh, these devas are okay, then the bonds disappear. And he's able to enjoy all the joys of heaven, So that is very subtle, So Buddha said, okay, if you think that kind of bonds are subtle, Vipachiti's bond or Sakra's bonds, wait till you see Mara's bonds, even more subtle. Subtle means powerful. Here the Buddha is addressing the ancient Indians who know this ancient story very well. So the Buddha is using this old story to bring in a new truth. Okay? Alright, so the Buddha said, Mara's bonds even more subtle, more frightening. Indeed, bhikshus, mental conceiving is a bond of Mara. Not conceiving, one is free from the bad one. Mara is called the bad one. The Western scholars don't like to call Mara the evil one because they say the word evil is a Christian word. There's the idea of God idea and so on. Mara is bad because Mara can one day become good. You see, this is a very interesting point. Okay, again, notice here, there's a wonderful Buddhist teaching about the way the mind works. There's hope for everyone. The Buddha says we all are bound, imprisoned by what? By our mental conceiving, we create all kinds of ideas in our mind, we start thinking this, thinking that, and that imprisons us.
But it is a good idea.
Yes, of course if it's a good idea, then you are free from the bonds, you are happy, you see. Good ideas means what? Rooted in loving kindness, in charity, in wisdom. But if it's negative, then you become negative yourself. In fact, if you look at people who are suffering, what is causing them to suffer? It's what they are thinking, it's their minds. This is the statement here, okay? Then the Buddha lists the things, how we conceive things, how when we conceive ideas, we create ideas, we are suffering. Bhikshus, I am, this is a mental conceiving. I am this is a mental conceiving. I will be, this is a mental conceiving. I will not be, this is a mental conceiving. I will have form, this is a mental conceiving. I will be formless, this is a mental conceiving. I will have consciousness, this is a mental conceiving. I will be neither percipient nor non-percipient. In other words, I'll be neither conscious nor non-conscious. This is a mental conceiving. Mental conceiving, bhikshus, is a sickness. Mental conceiving is a tumor. Mental conceiving is a dart and arrow that hurts us. Therefore, bhikshus, thinking, I will dwell with a mind free of mental conceiving. Thus, indeed, bhikshus, you should train yourselves. Okay, what does this mean? Now, this is the interesting part, okay? You have the sutta here. This is like a raw diamond, okay? We need craftsmen to polish it, So what we need to transmit now is the oral tradition, the teaching behind this. And this teaching, you need to have meditation in it also. What is listed here, in other words, these are the things that people worry about. So it is very useful for counselors, So when counselors listen to people with a problem, they'll say, oh, I'm very worried, I'm unhappy. So that counselor will say, okay, what are you unhappy about? The answer will be one of these. How many things are these? 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, right? 9 basic ways of thinking. Actually, you don't have to be 9. They're mostly 1, 2, 3, 4. Just 4 will do. I am this, I will be, I will not be, okay? For example, people will say, oh, I'm not happy. I am not happy, okay? I am. Because I am is there. So we ask, why are you not happy? Or the person will say, I am like this. I am a failure. Okay? So say, okay, why do you say so, right? Or someone may say, oh, I'm going to get into trouble, right? I will be, right? Or he might say, I may not get something, or this girl rejected me, now I'll never be married, right? I'll be a monk or something, right? That's the fourth one, okay? Now that's very good, your laughter is recorded forever. Okay. So anyway, you can imagine how thorough, how complete the Buddha is here. He's telling us how we think. And from how we think, we suffer, right? So basically, let go of all these ideas. The question, of course, now is how do we do it? You see? And that's where your meditation skills, your counseling skills, your loving kindness comes in. But that's the basic idea. So the Pali word here is manyita. Okay? The words are behind you. You can see the first word, mental considering. Manyita comes from the root word man, meaning to think.
Where is it? Sorry?
Yeah. The Pali word, mental disturbance. Can you see just above 9.1? About 8.3 rather. Conceiving.
Yeah.
The Pali word is manyita. That's on the bottom first.
Right.
Yeah. If you want to copy the Pali word, it's there on the bottom. It's also in the book earlier on. So in a sense, the common saying, don't think too much, it's quite wise. Don't think too much, or learn to let go of your thoughts. Thoughts are meant to come, meant to go. Our whole life, things are like that. Look at your breath. You breathe in, you cannot hold your breath too long, you must let go of the breath again. You want to live, you must let go of the breath. You take your breath in, you must give it back. Same thing with thoughts, it comes, you must let it go. Right? Same with food also. We take, you must give back something. Right? So everything goes in a cycle. You cannot hold back. You hold back, you suffer. You can only try to hold back. We suffer because we try to do something that cannot be done. That's why it's called suffering. Okay? Alright, next one is mental disturbance. Injita. You see the word inj means to shake, move, shiver, something that disturbs us. So sometimes we are disturbed by something. We say, oh, this news is disturbing, right? In other words, we get distracted. So what is it that distracts us? Well, the Buddha says, if you think in this way, I am this, I will be, I will not be, you will be distracted, right? Or even if you go into higher levels of meditation, you say, I will have form. I want to meditate and reach the form jhana level. Why? Because, oh, it's fun. If I get to jhana, I'll be powerful. People respect me. So then you can do suffering, you can do pain. Or I will be formless if you go higher level. Or I will have consciousness. It's a kind of level of meditation here. Or I'll be non-conscious. It's one of the rare levels of meditation where the beings are in like a suspended animation. And then I will be neither percipient nor non-percipient, neither conscious nor non-conscious. So these are the attachment to higher levels of meditation.
Oh.
Okay?
I see.
Yeah, correct. Can you see that? Form, formless, consciousness, non-conscious, and neither perception nor non-perception. So it's just a summary of the levels of higher levels of meditation.
Right. So as stated here, it is in the context of being attached.
Correct.
To these forms of meditation,
Correct.
to these levels of meditation.
Yeah. So basically, we just meditate. We don't be attached to anything. Okay? I mean, it's just like the plants, Plants grow in the ground, yes. We only say the plants are attached to the ground in the, direct way, but plants just grow. They don't really care about the ground. So, mental disturbance, which is a sickness. It makes us feel sick. It's mental disturbance, a tumor. It lies there, causes pain. Mental disturbance is a dart, right? It can come from outside and it zaps us. Therefore, we choose thinking I will dwell with a mind free of mental disturbance. Thus, indeed, we choose we should train ourselves, right? And then the third cycle, everything is repeated. This time, the key word is mental agitation. And the Pali word is pandita. Now you look at the word on the whiteboard, the pandita, the PH, pan, and the root word is span, meaning to quiver.
What's the difference between disturbance and agitation? They're quite close.
Yeah, you see, agitation is a bit more severe. A fish that's thrown out of the water, quiver as they start jumping out. In other words, they're panic, there's a sense of panic here. Alright? So someone says, oh, I am in trouble, I will panic, you know. So you can think in terms of panic here. I am this, I will be, I will not be, I will have form, I will be formless, I will have consciousness, I will be non-conscious, I will be neither percipient nor non-percipient. So all this can cause lots of agitation in a person. They won't be able to meditate. So the Buddha says you have to let go of all this. This is not helpful.
Anxiety?
Now, well, in a sense, all these words have the same meaning. See, it's just that occasionally, what the Buddha is trying to do is trying to stress the point. You have to let go of these things. If you start thinking, you won't be able to meditate. You just have to learn to let go. You notice sometimes we think, wow, this is really bad trouble going on. You deal with it, but after you find you think too much about it, it doesn't really help. So you might just forget about it, and you find the next day you wake up, things are much better. Things are not that bad. Okay? It is, as I said, thinking makes it so. This is one way of putting it. So this mental agitation has been really troubled. You know? So that is why, as I said, the Dharma is very useful. Here you find this teaching telling us what to do. It's right there before us. You know? The language is so simple, but people still say suttas are too deep, and yet the words are so simple. Maybe because of the simplicity, we are, we have the wrong idea. We are deluded to thinking, it's so easy, we never think twice about it. But actually, that's the solution. It's just like when you're driving, the sign says turn right, no left turn. We just follow the signs, you know. But if you're chatting, you don't pay attention, of course, you go the wrong way. We can see people driving the wrong way very often because they're not paying attention to it, right? So here basically is, look at the suttas, what does it say? Follow the suttas, right? We prefer grand stories, jokes, and so on. In the end, we don't remember anything. Now the next one is very interesting, mental proliferation, papancha, or here the word is papanchita. Mental proliferation means a kind of explosion of ideas, so many ideas until our minds are overwhelmed with thoughts. So 11.1, big shoes, I am is a mental proliferation. I am this, I will be, I will not be, I will have form, I will be formless, I will have consciousness, I will be non-conscious, I will be neither percipient nor non-percipient. All these are mental proliferation. In other words, one thought leads to another, and then we are lost in thoughts. And once you're lost in thoughts, you're not mindful, then you won't be happy, you get hurt, you even get trouble, even death may come as a result. So this gets worse, mental proliferation. So in meditation, we just free our minds of thoughts, peace at that moment. And then when we meet people, we think carefully, mindfully, are more helpful that way. Now the last one is conceit, falling into conceit. Mana gata. Mana means conceit, gata means gone to. But here we can translate figuratively as falling into conceit. What does conceit mean? Conceit is measuring, right? We look at ourselves, we compare ourselves with others. We look down on people, okay? Especially like we think, oh, I'm high class, this guy's low class, I'm well dressed, this person's not well dressed, so this person is out of class or whatever. We measure people, right? So, of course, measuring people, there are three ways. We think we are better than this person, or worse off than this person, inferior, superior, inferior, or equal. So you have the superior complex, inferior complex, and equality complex. And then you multiply, you get 9, because let's say if you are actually, in a sense, not as good as the other person, you can think 3 more, and then you multiply, you get 9 ways of thinking. Just like we don't know, we're going to count. The point here is, we should not measure people. We just, everything is passing, everything is changing. So even though at this point you might think, oh, we are better off than other people, what are we talking about? Okay, maybe in an exam you did better than someone, but in something else you're not as good, and so on. So things are there's so many variables. So we should not especially as Dharma teachers, as Buddhist practitioners, as Buddhist workers, or simply as people helpers, we don't measure people. We help them because they need help. And then we see them healing, we're very happy. This is a practice of the 4 Brahma Viharas. The 4 Brahma Viharas, 45 words, means don't measure people. They're called the 4 immeasurable states. So we help people with loving kindness, because we say, may you be well and happy. And this person is not fortunate enough, so we show our compassion. And when the person is healed, we feel joyful, gladness, the 3rd divine abode. And then we find, wow, no matter how much effort we put in, there's still people who are sick, there's still people we can't help, right? And we have to keep our minds calm. It's not our fault, that's the nature of the world. So these are the 4 divine abodes, okay? Loving kindness, compassion, gladness, equanimity. So opposite of that will be measuring people, okay? So here again, when you measure people, you say, I am this, I will be, I will not be, I will have form, I will be formless, I will have consciousness, I will be non-conscious, I will be neither percipient nor non-percipient. So these are all cases of falling into conceit, measuring others. So this all we have to let go, we have to overcome this, then we are at peace with ourselves. And the sutta ends there, okay? We just finished the sutta. It's okay. We're very happy to have you here. Yeah.
Yeah, the neither percipient nor non-percipient, this is the 4th level of
Formless strength.
formless, neither perception nor non-perception. Is that the one? Is this the same one?
Yes, correct.
Chinese is called 非想非可想.
Yes, yeah. In other words, the question is so subtle you cannot say it's there or it's not there. Yeah, so high level. So this teaching, again, is that it's how we think that affects our lives. So if we think negative thoughts, then it will encroach upon us. We will become the thoughts that we harbor. Just like Vipachiti, although he was captured by the gods, these are all magical bonds, So if he thinks happily of the devas, he shows loving kindness, then he's freed from the bonds. Because what really bound him, meaning what? What differentiates the asura from the deva is their mind, see? Because the asura has a lot of violent negative thoughts. So the asura clears his mind of the negative thoughts, they go back to their deva state. It's another way of saying it. And if we look a little deeper here, we can say, I think is it Mingzi, the very positive Chinese philosopher? Mozi or Mingzi? Anyway, so he believes that he said we should show loving kindness to all beings. All beings are by nature good. Mingzi, isn't it? Menzi. So, but he's not very popular with Chinese philosophy. The Chinese, people are by nature good, But in Buddhism, you can say people are by nature good, you see? So like the devas, So if they think negative, then they become asuras. So if we think negative, we become asuras ourselves. So if we let go of those negative thoughts, we go back to our divine state, or at least human state. The idea is to let go of the negative thoughts that we have. So here you have the principle of counseling, very important principle in counseling. When someone comes to you for counseling, your task is to help this person free himself or herself from those negative thoughts. So you listen carefully and then you kind of guide this person, to teach this person how to let go of those negative thoughts so that they go back to their happy state, so to speak, or attain a level of peace by letting go of the painful, unnecessary thought. It's just like a wound. The Buddha says it's a boil, right? A boil has got pus inside. So a doctor will come, cut open the wound, remove the boil, and then cover it with some bandage and so on, and the person feels good. So we have to let go of those thinking and wondering and measuring. That's what causes suffering.
Here, what are the 5 divine sensations?
The 5 senses on the divine level, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. because these are still lower realm, you know, they are not the form realm devas, these are the sense world devas. Because the heaven of 33 is still part of the sense world, so they enjoy pleasures of the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body.
Oh, so this is a sense world data.
Correct, yeah, yes. So you have worldly five senses, the divine five senses. Mundane five senses, the divine five
These are all the
senses.
same.
Well, think in terms of the devas. Human beings, we see television, we see movies, we see colors. Devas, they can project their own beautiful visions. Smell, okay, we depend on plants and perfume. Devas, they can just conjure their own smell that we can't even imagine, and so on. Sounds, music, and so on. So on the divine level, it's more refined. So this is the Indian conception anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? You can still have a few minutes. In fact, today I intend to study to be short because we have to move some things to our new center today in around 2 o'clock, you know. So, anyway, we still can give some time for questions. You know?
So, talking about the theme for this sutta,
Yes.
here it says how our senses affect our thinking. I think this sutta is more about how we think affect how we feel.
Yeah, you can say that also because our senses are the doors to our mind. Okay, the mind projects itself onto the senses. Yeah, there are different ways of actually putting in the subtitle. Yes?
From what I saw just a bit, this sutta has got something to do with Mara.
Oh yeah.
And my quick question is, actually why do we need to have the concept of Mara? I mean, to me it's very close to Satan in the Christian context. So we know that Satan doesn't exist.
True.
And we know that actually Mara doesn't exist. It's our idea. But is there a reason why Buddhism created
Oh,
the
yes.
concept of Mara?
It is a very good reason.
Yeah.
Well, you're right in saying that we, meaning here we in Singapore, we don't need the concept of Mara. That is perfectly true. But the idea of Mara is something familiar to the ancient Indians of the Buddha's time. So they could relate to it. And they love this kind of story because if the Buddha talks of all good guys and no bad guys, it's going to be very boring storytelling. So this was basically storytelling. So you got to have the good guys, the bad guys. It's a kind of what you call what do you call that? Dualities, you know.
Putting an image in words, something like that.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, this is called thesis, antithesis. That's one. This German philosopher has got this idea. In other words, if you have the Buddha, who is the wisest, most compassionate of all beings, logically speaking, you should also have the other end. Who do you have on the other end? See? So they say, okay, theoretically speaking, on the other end, the bad end, we call him Mara. Okay, but even then, it's just a term we use. The baddest guy possible. Okay, but even then, we know it's not permanent. Because, for example, some of the stories are really amusing, you know, because this is on a mythical level. Like you say, it doesn't really exist in the way we exist. Nobody has ever seen Mara, except the latest story. They start writing, one of his monks actually used his rope and tied up Mara. He could only do that with his rope. It's an amazing story. I think it must have been written in Myanmar. And you know why this monk captured Mara? Because he wanted to know how the Buddha looked like exactly. And the only being he knows is Mara, because Mara has been following the Buddha, trying to tempt him, so he wants to know how the Buddha looks like. So the story went that he took a lot of trouble and he managed to capture Mara, kidnap him in fact, and then wouldn't let him go until he described how the Buddha looked like. But of course, we assume Mara is telling the truth. There's a problem. So this is a very famous story in Burma, you know, about this monk Upagupta, very famous in China. He captured Mara, Mara started describing about the Buddha. And after it's a beautiful story, we talk about literary form, you find this is very rich literary form. And if you study literature, you will definitely be interested in this kind of story. But then there's another story where Moggallana was attacked, or rather what do you call that?
The stomach.
This Mara entered his stomach and caused a real bad stomach ache. So instead of saying a bad stomach ache, the story goes that Mara went to Moggallana's stomach, and like in the monkey story, he really messed up Moggallana's stomach. But Moggallana knew this Mara. He says, Mara, here's this very interesting dialogue with Mara inside his belly. He says, you know, his name is Dusi. He even know this Mara's name. He says, Dusi, why do you trouble me? You know, many, many lives ago, I was your uncle. Why do you torture me now? You know, you should be ashamed of yourself. And interestingly, Mara was actually in trouble. You know, Mara was ashamed he came out, you know. And Moggallana was free from suffering. Of course, here Mara has got great psychic powers. Psychic powers, right? Deep meditation, you know. So this kind of story, they are indirect way of telling us a few things. Number one, it is our mind that causes the pain, and Mara represents a negative mind. So if we can understand the nature of the mind, then we can exorcise Mara.
So I've always treated Mara as being states of mind.
Yes. Yeah.
So in this story, he's
Yeah, it takes a person form.
yeah, I mean, and he goes so far as to say that, to have Moggallana say that I was your uncle.
Yeah.
So I think if you're not
Yeah.
personality, you can't possibly have.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's why the Buddha said you've got to differentiate what level is the storyteller telling you. Even in Western literature, you find a certain time in the history of Western religion, you find a special time, I think, when Buddhism was influencing the Middle Ages, you find the villagers that love to watch the morality plays. They're called morality plays. I don't know whether you've heard of them. And charity, compassion, goodness, and of course the negative qualities, evil, lust, and so on, they all take human forms.
Personified, yeah.
Yeah, and they call the everyman stories, you know? Yeah. So this kind of story is very common in religion, where qualities are personified. So because it's easier for people to understand.
Yeah.
Okay? Alright, so, and there's another interesting story, even the King Yama, you know, younger one, King Yama. You find in the stories about him in the suttas are really interesting and humorous, you know. So King Yama sits like a judge, okay, and he judges all these beings being reborn in hell in this realm, and he asks them, "Have you not seen the 5 signs? You know, a baby, a criminal being punished, an old man, sick man, dead man, you know." And then this person says, "Yes, I've seen them." And then the King Yama says, "Have you not realized, you know, by looking at all these signs that if you're young, you grow old, and then you get sick, and if you do something wrong, you'll be punished. Don't you know that life is impermanent, there's no point doing evil?" And then these people, these hell beings say, "Oh no, we were Hitlers, we never think of it that way. Although we have seen these 5 signs, we never thought of it that way." And so imagine, you know, Yama has to see how many of these beings every day, thousands, right? And his whole lifetime, all this does is keep repeating this thing. In Singapore, we will digitize, we'll automatize, robotize all these things. So King Yama suddenly realized, what am I doing here? All I'm doing is just putting these people, you know, sending them to be punished, and it's a really boring job, you know. So he made a vow, okay? May I be reborn in the Buddha's time so that I can become a monk and attain awakening. So in other words, you see even the role of Yama is also permanent. So it's not a fixed being. Someone can be reborn into that realm, into that role, so to speak. Anyway, we have no problem with that, because to us all these are stories, they're mythical stories of how pain can fall upon us if we trade by karma. So it's a very fluid idea in Buddhist literature. Good and evil are stories we tell so that people are moved to do actions which bring them greater happiness. Okay, any other question?
I got one question about this Asura. So the Asura realized that if he changed the way he thinks, actually he can enjoy the heavenly bliss. But why is that he does still no change?
Well, asuras are just, they are characters in the mythology. So in a sense, you might say they are stereotypes. Just like in Greek mythology, there are stereotypes, So Zeus is the father figure, right? And each of the gods represents their own qualities. So the asuras are supposed to represent violence, exploitation, that kind of. So they are archetypes or stereotypes in that sense. So archetypes and stereotypes don't really change, technically speaking. But here, the Buddha is saying it's possible to change, because change is always there. If you really want to change, you can. Right? So in other words, there's no such thing as a fixed stereotype or fixed archetype or those Platonic forms, those essential qualities. All this can change. As long as you exist, as long as you're alive, you can change. You must change to become better, to be happy, to awaken. It's just that it's a matter of your choice. If you don't change, then you go down. If you change, you go up in the spiritual evolution. Okay? Any other question? So remember, this is a reflection just for us to read through. Don't think too much, just read through, because if you ask, what do I gain from this, then you already decided that you might not gain anything from it. So what I suggest is you just take one passage that you feel attracted to, or just try one, and just read through it without any judgment, and then let it sink into your mind, and just let it be. Maybe nothing happens for a few days, a few weeks, even a few months, years even. And then one day, something clicks or something arises in your mind. You say, oh yes, now I see what the sutta is trying to say. So these are all very wonderful windows into reality. So when you have the vocabulary of such teachings, in time to come, you begin to identify happy things that are going on around you. Or you begin to notice solutions to problems around you. So the suttas are useful in that way. They are like tools that you prepare yourself early with, and then when the time comes, you know what to do. Right? It's like training in the mind helping.
Piya,
Yes.
This the repetitive I am, from the third one onwards, from the third on all the way to the ninth one, the word Bavisan, which is goes from Bhavana, which is what? Meditation?
No, it means to be. But bhavana means to cultivation.
Yeah. So, okay, I think my question is, why cultivation? Okay, why, let me say this carefully, non-perceiving, non-conscious, consciousness, formless form. This is, I think, derived from the four states of
Formless, right? Formless meditation. Yeah.
Right?
They call it formless meditations.
Yeah. So why did Buddha have this these here? Yeah. I guess what I'm trying to say is
Well, let me help with this.
so many ways that he is deconstructing the ways we think. But there are so many ways we think. So why has he specifically included these meditative states?
Because the meditation by itself doesn't bring release or awakening. It is when you let go of the meditation that the awakening comes.
When
you let go of the meditation. Because, for example, the form jhanas, the formless jhanas, they are pleasant, but they're not awakening states by themselves. Right? So you let go of them, the mind is clear, then you reflect with a clear mind on the true nature of the world, impermanent and so on. Then awakening comes. But some people, they might just meditate, they say, wow, this is great, and then they talk about it, and then they publicize it, etc. Then they get caught up with it. People can get caught up with it.
So he has specifically, that is why he has specifically included them in here, telling us, don't be attached to the jhanas.
Correct.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
When you see all these verbs, bhavisati, bhavisan, and so on, they come from the root word bu, meaning to be. Or in English, we say the verbs to be. Okay?
What?
Verbs to be. In English. English grammar, verbs to be.
From
The
which time
E is, was, were, and so on. Bu, the root word bu, bhu. You have the root sign and then bhu with the line over the u.
From which Bhavisan?
All these words. Bhavati, bhavisam, bhavisati. When you see the front part, bhav, so it's the same root meaning to be. It is just Pali grammar. Okay? Any other question?
Okay, this is very interesting.
Yes.
That we have specifically included attachment to the jhanas.
True, yes.
Here.
You see, because if there is the sutta called Ratta Vinita Sutta, where there's a long list of teachings, you know. For example, this question is asked, did this monk A ask monk B, did you renounce the world simply to practice the precepts only, to be morally virtuous? He says no. Is it then to practice meditation? He says no. And all the different stages are given, you know. Right to the end, short of nirvana, you know, attain even the highest level. It says no, until the end. So what do you practice Buddhism for, the Dharma for? To attain nirvana. That's the last answer. So the purpose of renunciation, the purpose of practicing the Dharma is to free ourselves from suffering. Not just to keep the precepts. In other words, not to ritualize those things. If you ritualize means you just take it as an end in itself. That keeping the precepts are good in themselves, without understanding that the purpose is to prepare our body and mind for meditation, mental cultivation, peace of mind. Okay? So in other words, one thing leads to another. It's called a gradual path. Gradual path. Okay? So what Buddha is saying, don't stop here. It's just like now we're studying the suttas here. I've never said that the suttas are good in themselves. I always say, okay, where do you go from here? Now that you have studied the suttas, what are you going to do about it? Which part can you reflect on and then see some change in you? So ultimately, some kind of change must occur with us. In other words, these are tools of bringing human transformation, spiritual transformation, in other words. Okay? So in other words, we become better people. Shall we end here then? So let us close the short reflection. Today we have looked at a very short, instructive sutta which helps us to reflect on the Buddha's teaching on how to bring the mind to peace and tranquility. How we think affects our lives. So this sutta is reminding us to let go of thoughts, to look at things as they really are, and so to heal ourselves, so that wisdom will grow. Reflecting in this way is very good mental karma. By the power of such karma, may we even now, in this life itself, here and now, attain peace of mind, attain happiness, prosperity in the Dharma in this life itself. And by the power of all the good deeds we have done, keeping the precepts, practicing generosity, doing Dharma work, and various other good works, may we attain spiritual awakening, may we aspire to at least stream winning in this life itself. In this moment of peace, let us set up our loving kindness to all the people here. May they all be well and happy. To all the beings here, may they all be well and happy. And to all our loved ones too, that they may be well and happy. And to those whom the Dharma have not touched, that they may realize the Dharma and be good and happy beings too. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.